Before I tell you what happened to me on that road, do this one thing first. If you're someone who craves real, slow-burning horror, the kind that doesn't rely on cheap shocks, but crawls under your skin and stays there, then subscribe to this channel right now. Like the video, share it with someone who thinks they've heard it all, and leave a comment telling me what city or country you're watching from and what time it is for you right now. Because what I'm about to tell you isn't just a story. It's something I survived, and I'm still not sure I fully escaped it. I've driven highways most people only see as thin gray lines on a map. Endless stretches of asphalt, cutting through forests, deserts, plains, places where the sky feels too wide and the silence presses in from all sides. I've hauled freight through snowstorms that erased the world, heat waves that melted tires, and nights so dark the headlights felt like weak prayers thrown into a void. I used to believe every road, no matter how lonely, eventually led somewhere. I don't believe that anymore. Because there is one highway in the United States that doesn't behave like the others. A road that doesn't just take you forward. It watches you. It listens. And once you're on it, it decides whether you leave. I didn't know that when I took the job. I was 41 at the time. Been driving long haul for over 2 decades. My logbooks were clean, my instincts sharp, my routine predictable. I wasn't reckless, and I wasn't superstitious either. I trusted what I could see, what I could measure, what my hands could feel on the wheel. That confidence is dangerous on certain roads. The load itself was ordinary. Sealed cargo, temperature controlled, scheduled for overnight delivery across state lines. Nothing illegal, nothing fragile, nothing that should have mattered. I'd done runs like this hundreds of times. The route, though, the route was new. Dispatch mentioned it casually, like it was no big deal. Faster cut-through, they said. Barely any traffic, they said. You'll shave hours off your time. I remember glancing at the digital map, tracing the thin line that cut straight through a region most drivers avoided. Not officially, not on paper, but instinctively. A long, isolated highway that slipped between forests and open land, far from cities, far from lights. I hesitated, not because I was afraid, but because something about that stretch felt blank, like it wasn't fully there. I ignored the feeling. Experience teaches you to distrust emotions that can't be explained. So I fueled up, checked my rig, logged my hours, and rolled out as the daylight began to thin. By the time I reached the start of that highway, the weather had turned. Rain came down in hard, slanted sheets, the kind that blur distance and flatten depth. The sky was a solid slab of dark gray, pressing low over the land. Visibility dropped fast, not because of the rain alone, but because of the mist that rose from the pavement, hanging in the air like breath that refused to disperse. I slowed down, flipped on additional lights, and leaned forward in my seat. That was the first strange thing. The road was empty. No oncoming headlights. No taillights ahead. No rest stops. No signage beyond the occasional mile marker that appeared too late and vanished too fast. At first, that didn't bother me. Plenty of highways get quiet at night, especially ones far from major cities. But minutes passed, then more, and still, nothing. The rain drummed steadily against the cab, a constant pressure that made time feel thick. My tires hissed against wet asphalt. The world outside my windshield shrank to a narrow tunnel of light and shadow. That's when I realized something else. The radio signal was gone. Static swallowed every station, no matter how I tuned it. Even the emergency band gave me nothing but a low, restless hiss. I told myself it was terrain interference. Happens more often than people think. Still, I turned the volume down. Silence felt safer. I checked my mirrors out of habit, scanning for movement. The road behind me stretched back into darkness, perfectly straight, perfectly empty. No curves, no rises, no dips, just an endless ribbon disappearing into fog. I'd been driving that stretch for a long time when the thought hit me. Too long. My internal clock told me I should have passed at least one interchange by now. My map confirmed it. According to the display, I was moving. Speed steady. Distance ticking down. But the surroundings never changed. Same trees. Same guardrail. Same shape of shadows leaning toward the road. It felt like driving through a loop that didn't announce itself. I adjusted my grip on the wheel, feeling a faint tension crawl up my arms. The kind you get when your body notices something your mind hasn't accepted yet. That's when I heard it. Not a sound outside the truck, but inside my head. A voice. Low. Unclear. Not calling out. More like humming words just below comprehension. I shook my head, forced a breath, and told myself I was tired. Long hours do strange things to perception. I reached for my water bottle, took a long drink, and focused on the road. Then the shape appeared. At first, it was just a suggestion. Something pale at the edge of my headlights. I eased off the accelerator, squinting through the rain and mist. The shape resolved into a person, standing in the road. I slammed the brakes. The truck shuddered as weight shifted forward, tires fighting for traction on slick pavement. My heart hammered against my ribs as the rig slowed, but not fast enough. There was an impact, not violent, not loud, just a heavy, sickening jolt that traveled up through the steering column and into my chest. The truck came to a stop. For a moment, I couldn't move. My hands were locked around the wheel. My breathing came in short, sharp pulls. Rain streaked down the windshield, blurring everything beyond it. I whispered a single word to myself. No. I killed the engine and sat there, staring ahead. The shape wasn't visible from the cab. That didn't make it better. That made it worse. I forced myself to open the door. Cold air rushed in, carrying the sharp scent of wet earth and asphalt. The rain soaked into my jacket immediately as I climbed down, boots hitting the road with a dull thud. The highway felt wrong beneath my feet. Not uneven, just dead. Like it had absorbed too much over the years and given nothing back. I walked forward, every step heavy with dread. Then I saw her. She was standing where the headlights cut through the rain, just off center in the lane. And the first thing my mind did was reject what my eyes were telling it. Because she shouldn't have been standing at all. Her clothes hung in tatters, clinging to a frame that looked both fragile and impossibly rigid. Skin stretched tight in places, missing in others, revealing shapes beneath that made my stomach twist. Her face, God, her face, was fixed in an expression that didn't belong to anything living. It wasn't pain, it was expectation. As if she had been waiting for me. I stumbled back, breath hitching in my throat. My mind scrambled for explanations, but none of them fit. No accident could leave someone like that and still standing. No living body moved the way she did. Too still, too balanced, like gravity held no authority over her. She tilted her head slightly. The motion was slow, deliberate. And in that moment, I understood something with terrifying clarity. This wasn't a collision, it was a meeting. I backed away until my shoulders hit the side of the truck. My heart pounded so hard it blurred my vision. I kept my eyes on her, afraid of what might happen if I looked away, even for a second. Then, without warning, she was gone. Not fading. Not retreating. Gone. The road ahead was empty again, rain washing over bare asphalt as if nothing had ever stood there. I stood frozen, waiting for something, anything to happen. Nothing did. After a long moment, I climbed back into the cab, hands shaking as I shut the door. I turned the key. The engine came to life. Relief flooded me in a hot, dizzy wave. I told myself it was over. That fear had filled in the blanks and made something monstrous out of shadows and exhaustion. I pulled forward. That's when I saw her again. Not ahead of me. Behind me, in the rear-view mirror. She stood in the center of the lane, exactly where the truck had been moments earlier. Rain passed through her like smoke. Her eyes, dark, hollow, impossibly focused, were locked onto mine. I pressed the accelerator. The truck surged forward. She didn't move, not closer, not farther. She stayed exactly the same distance behind me, perfectly framed in the mirror, no matter how fast I went. That's when panic truly set in. I pushed harder, engine roaring, tires slicing through water. My speed climbed, but the highway ahead never changed. The same trees, the same markers, the same oppressive fog, and in the mirror, she was still there, watching, waiting. I didn't know it yet, but I had crossed the point of no return, and the road had decided to keep me. I wish I could say that fear fades once you accept it, that once you understand you're trapped inside something unnatural, your mind adjusts and finds a way through. That's a lie. Fear doesn't fade. It sharpens. It becomes precise. When I realized that the distance behind me never changed, no matter how hard I pushed the accelerator, my first instinct wasn't to scream or pray or abandon the truck. It was to calculate. Speed, fuel, traction, visibility. If this thing followed rules, I could survive it. I glanced at the fuel gauge. The needle had moved. Not drastically, but enough to make my stomach tighten. Fuel was being burned, which meant the truck was moving, which meant I wasn't standing still, even though the road looked exactly the same. I focused on the lane markings, counting the gaps between the reflective stripes. They passed beneath me in a steady rhythm. The sound of the engine, the vibration through the seat, the resistance in the wheel, everything said forward motion. Yet the scenery refused to change. It was like the highway had been copy-pasted over itself, again and again. And behind me, she remained, not gaining, not falling back, just present. Her shape was clearer now. The rain no longer obscured her form the way it had before. She stood upright, balanced with unnatural stillness, as if the road itself was holding her in place. I forced my eyes back to the windshield. Looking at her felt dangerous, like acknowledging her too directly gave her permission. I rolled down the window a fraction, letting the cold air bite into my face. The scent outside had changed. Less asphalt, more earth, wet leaves, old wood, forest. The highway had narrowed. I hadn't noticed when it happened. The shoulders were thinner now, guardrails gone, trees pressing close enough that their branches seemed to lean toward the road. Their silhouettes blurred together in the fog, tall and crooked, like a crowd of witnesses who refused to speak. My GPS flickered. The map froze, then refreshed. According to the display, I was no longer on any recognized road, just a blinking arrow floating in blank space. My throat went dry. "No," I muttered, tapping the screen. "That's not possible. The arrow moved when I moved. Speed updated. Direction changed when I turned the wheel slightly. But the map never returned. I was driving somewhere that officially didn't exist. That's when I heard the voice again. Clearer this time. Not from the radio. Not from outside. From inside the cab. It spoke my name. Not shouted. Not whispered. Spoke in the way someone does when they already know you're listening. I gripped the wheel harder, knuckles whitening. "You're tired," I told myself. "You've been driving too long." But the voice didn't sound like exhaustion. It sounded patient. I checked the side window. Nothing. Checked the other side. Nothing. The road ahead curved slightly, just enough to break the monotony. Relief sparked in my chest. Curves meant progress. Curves meant geography. I followed it. The curve led me directly back to the same stretch of road I'd already been on. Same tree split down the middle by lightning. Same cluster of rocks near the shoulder. Same bent mile marker, number scratched away. My breath came faster. "This isn't real," I said out loud, needing to hear my own voice. "This is just stress," the voice responded. "You've been here before." The words landed heavy, like something dropped into still water. I slammed the brakes again, truck shuddering as it slowed. The road ahead emptied. No figure stood there this time. Heart racing, I opened the door and stepped down once more. The rain had softened into a fine mist. Fog clung low to the ground, swirling around my boots. The forest loomed close enough now that I could hear it. Leaves rustling without wind, branches shifting against each other in slow, deliberate movements. The highway behind me wasn't straight anymore. It bent gently to the left, disappearing between the trees. I turned slowly, scanning my surroundings. There were no stars overhead, no moon, just a low, glowing haze that seemed to come from nowhere and everywhere at once. The silence pressed in. Then I noticed something that made my skin crawl. The sound of the engine. It was still running, even though I'd turned the key off. I backed away from the truck, pulse hammering. "That's not..." I stopped myself. Arguing with the impossible felt pointless. I climbed back into the cab and shut the door, sealing myself inside a familiar space. The dashboard lights glowed softly, steady and calm, as if nothing were wrong. I took a breath, then another. And that's when I realized I wasn't alone inside the truck anymore. The passenger seat dipped, not violently, not suddenly, just enough to tell me something had settled there. I stared straight ahead, afraid to turn my head. The air grew colder on my right side. A faint pressure brushed against my arm, like fabric passing close without touching. "I don't want trouble," I said, my voice barely steady. "I just want to leave." The response came instantly. "You already did." My chest tightened. What does that mean? Silence. I risked a glance. The seat was empty, but the indentation remained, like someone had just stood up. My breathing grew shallow. I scanned the cab, behind the seats, the sleeper compartment, the floor. Nothing. Still, the sense of being watched hadn't left. I pulled back onto the road. The truck responded immediately, smoother than before, almost eager. The highway sloped downward, entering a shallow valley where fog pooled thick and heavy. Visibility shrank to almost nothing. My headlights illuminated only a few yards ahead, everything beyond swallowed whole. That's when I saw the lights. 2 distant points, faint but unmistakable. Headlights. Relief hit me so hard I laughed. Another driver meant reality, rules, witnesses. I flashed my lights, leaned on the horn. The lights didn't respond. They stayed fixed in place, growing brighter only because I was moving toward them. As I drew closer, the shape of another truck emerged from the fog, pulled over at an angle near the shoulder. Its engine was off. No hazard lights. No movement. I slowed and stopped beside it. I didn't want to get out. Every instinct screamed at me to stay inside. Doors locked, engine running. But I also knew isolation was feeding whatever had hold of this road. I stepped down. The other truck was older, paint worn dull by years of hard miles. Its trailer bore no markings. The cab door was open. "Hey!" I called out. "You okay?" A figure moved inside. A man climbed down, boots crunching softly on wet gravel. He was around my age, maybe a little older, face lined with exhaustion rather than fear. He looked normal, human. The relief was overwhelming. "Thank God," I said, stepping closer. "I thought I was losing my mind." He studied me for a long moment, eyes sharp, calculating. "You saw her too," he said. It wasn't a question. My stomach dropped. "You did," he continued. "On the road." I nodded slowly. His shoulders sagged, like he'd been holding something up for a long time. "How long have you been here?" I asked. He hesitated. "Long enough to stop trusting the map," he said. "Long enough to understand the road doesn't care how experienced you are." He gestured toward the trees. "This place feeds on direction, on certainty. Once you start doubting where you're going, it closes around you." I swallowed. "Can we get out?" He met my eyes. "Yes," he said, "but not by going forward." I frowned. "What do you mean?" He looked back toward my truck, then behind it. "You ever notice how this road hates being watched head-on?" he asked. "How it always shows you the same thing no matter how far you go." I thought of the unchanging scenery, the endless loop. "It doesn't work the same way from the other side," he said. A chill ran through me. "You mean?" "Exactly." The idea felt wrong the moment it formed. Dangerous. But so did staying. The man stepped back into his cab. "I've tried everything else," he called out. "This is the only thing that's worked even a little." I returned to my truck, hands trembling as I climbed inside. The figure behind me, her presence, felt closer now, like anticipation radiating through the air. I shifted gears, slowly, carefully, and eased the truck backward. The sensation was immediate. The pressure in my head lessened, just slightly. The fog ahead thinned a fraction. The voice went quiet. For the first time since entering that highway, something changed. Behind me, the road straightened. I focused on guiding the truck using only what I could see through the back view. Trees sliding past in a direction that finally felt honest. Every nerve screamed that I was doing something unnatural. But the road responded. The man's truck followed. Side by side, backward through the fog, we moved away from the place where I'd met her. I didn't know where we were going. Only that for the first time. The highway felt uncertain, and that terrified it. Reversing a fully loaded semi on a fog-choked highway goes against every instinct a driver has. Your body fights it. Your mind screams that one mistake will fold metal, shatter bone, end everything. But fear had already rewritten my instincts. So I did the impossible thing. I trusted what felt wrong. The man in the other truck kept pace beside me, his headlights angled just enough to illuminate the road behind us. We moved slowly, deliberately, like two insects backing away from a trap that hadn't quite closed yet. The fog began to thin, not vanish, but loosen. I could see farther now. Not much, but enough to notice something that made my throat tighten. The trees were changing, They weren't the same gnarled silhouettes that had hemmed the road earlier. These were taller, straighter. Pines instead of twisted hardwoods. The forest smelled different too. Cleaner, colder, like high ground after rain. Elevation. We were climbing. How is that possible? I muttered. The road behind me sloped upward, a gentle grade that hadn't been there before. My truck strained slightly against gravity even as I rolled backward. I glanced toward the other driver through the side window. He gave a small nod, as if he'd noticed it too. Something shifted in the air. The pressure inside my head, constant since the moment I'd struck her, eased just enough for me to notice how exhausted I was. My shoulders ached. My jaw felt locked tight. I hadn't realized how long I'd been holding my breath. Then the voice came back. Not close. Farther away now. It spoke my name again, stretched thin, as if pulled through distance that didn't want to cooperate. I ignored it. That seemed to anger the road. The incline steepened. My tires slipped slightly on wet pavement, traction warning flashing briefly on the dash. The fog thickened again. Not all around, but ahead of us. Behind, the air cleared more with every foot. The road didn't like retreat. You feel that? The other driver crackled over the CB radio. I hadn't even realized it was working again. Yeah, I replied. My voice sounded hoarse. It's pushing. That's because it wants you facing forward, he said. It feeds on intention. Then why does this work? There was a pause. Because this isn't how it learned to trap people, he said. Someone taught it the other way. A chill crawled up my spine. Someone? I asked. The radio crackled with static. When his voice returned, it was quieter. Or something. The road crested suddenly. Just like that, the incline leveled out, and the fog tore open. I blinked, disoriented. Ahead of us, behind us now technically, stood a building. A rest stop, perfectly intact, perfectly lit. Yellow sodium lights glowed warmly against wet concrete. Vending machines hummed under an overhang. A row of empty parking spaces waited patiently. White lines crisp and clean. It looked safe. Too safe. I brought the truck to a stop. The other driver did the same. For a long moment, neither of us moved. This wasn't here before, I said. He laughed softly, humorless. It never is, he replied. The voice was silent now, not even distant. The air felt neutral, normal. That scared me more than anything else so far. You think it's real? I asked. He didn't answer right away. I think it's allowed, he finally said. That's different. I killed the engine. Silence settled around us, broken only by the soft buzz of lights and the faint hum of power lines overhead. I stepped down from the cab. The ground felt solid. The concrete was warm beneath my boots, as if it had been absorbing heat all night. Rain no longer fell here. The sky above the rest stop was clear, stars faintly visible through drifting clouds. It felt like stepping into another state entirely. The other driver joined me. Up close, I could see the lines of strain etched deep around his eyes. How long were you trapped? I asked. He looked toward the dark stretch of road we'd come from. Long enough to forget what day it was, he said. Long enough to start believing I'd always been there. I swallowed. Did you ever see her before tonight? Yes, he said. Not like you did. She doesn't show herself the same way every time. Sometimes she just rearranges things. Why us? I asked. He shrugged. Because we keep moving, he said. And because highways are honest places to hide something hungry. We stood there in silence. Then I noticed the sign. It stood near the entrance to the restrooms. backlit by warm light. "Welcome, Center, you made it." The words looked freshly painted. Too freshly. "I don't like that," I said. "Neither do I," he replied. The vending machines flickered. Just for a moment. The hum of electricity wavered. I felt the shift immediately, like a subtle drop in pressure, the warning before a storm. "She knows we're here," I said. "She always knows," he replied. "The question is whether she's allowed to follow." The automatic restroom door slid open. Slowly. No one had approached them. A gust of cold air spilled out, carrying the smell of damp stone and something older, buried deep beneath layers of cleaning chemicals. I took a step back. "Nope," I said. "That's not happening." The lights inside flickered again. The words on the sign changed. Not all at once, just one letter at a time, rearranging themselves with quiet patience. "You made it. You stayed." The other driver cursed under his breath. "Listen to me," he said, grabbing my arm. His grip was firm, grounding. "This place is a test. If you rest, if you believe you're safe, you're done." "What do we do?" I asked. His eyes flicked toward the road behind the rest stop. "There should be an exit," he said. "Not marked, not obvious. That's how you know it's real." The lights went out. Every single one. The rest stop plunged into darkness so sudden it stole the breath from my lungs. Then they came back on. Dimmer. Colder. The vending machines were gone. So were the doors. The building itself had changed. Concrete walls had become rough stone, darkened by moisture. The windows were sealed over, opaque and thick. The sign above the entrance was cracked now, letters half missing. I stepped back instinctively, bumping into my truck. "That wasn't like that," I whispered. "No," he said. "Now it's honest." A shape moved at the edge of the parking lot. Not her. Something lower. Broader. The ground seemed to ripple as it approached, like heat distortion but colder. Heavier. The voice returned. Not in my head this time, but all around us. "You turned around," it said. That was rude. My heart hammered. "You don't own us," I shouted, surprised by my own anger. The air thickened. "I don't need to," the voice replied. "You brought yourselves." The other driver moved fast. He ran for his truck, climbed inside, engine roaring to life. I followed suit, adrenaline wiping away hesitation. We didn't coordinate. We didn't need to. Both of us knew staying still meant surrender. I threw the truck into gear and accelerated past the rest stop, tires screeching as I tore back onto the highway. The road ahead, forward now, looked different. Narrower. Darker. More alive. The trees leaned in again, branches twisting overhead, forming a canopy that blocked out the sky. Fog surged back, thick and aggressive, swallowing the edges of my headlights. "She's angry," the other driver's voice crackled over the radio. "I noticed," I replied. The road began to bend. Not sharply, just enough to disorient. Left, then right, then left again. Each curve feeding into the next like a question without an answer. I checked my fuel again. The needle dropped faster now. Too fast. "This thing's draining me," I said. "It does that when it thinks you're close to giving up," he replied. The road ahead opened suddenly into a clearing, a wide, flat stretch where the trees pulled back, revealing a structure rising from the earth. Not a building, a place. It looked like a small service town that had been abandoned mid-breath. Gas pumps stood crooked and rusted. A diner squatted near the road, windows dark, sign hanging at an angle. Lights glowed faintly inside. Warm, inviting. I slowed despite myself. "No," the other driver said sharply. "Don't." I just want to look, I said. That's how it gets you, he snapped. It offers you somewhere to stop. The voice laughed. Softly, I felt the truck decelerate further, my foot easing off the pedal without conscious command. The diner door creaked open. Inside, I could see movement. Shapes sitting at booths, heads turning in unison toward the road. My hands shook. You see them? I asked. Yes, he said. They're the ones who believed the rest stop. The shapes rose, stood. They weren't solid, not fully. Their outlines shimmered, details refusing to settle, like memories that had been recalled too many times. They began to move toward the door. I slammed my foot down, engine roaring in protest. The truck lurched forward. The diner lights flared, then shattered, plunging the clearing into darkness. The road snapped back into a narrow corridor between trees. The other driver let out a breath over the radio. Good, he said. You fought it. For how long? I asked. There was a long pause. Until it runs out of patience, he said. Or we do. The forest thinned again. The fog lifted in strips, tearing away to reveal open land ahead. I saw something then. Something I hadn't seen since entering that cursed stretch. A sign. A real one. Green. Reflective. Worn by weather and time. An exit marker. My chest tightened. The number on it wasn't one I recognized, but that didn't matter. What mattered was the arrow. It pointed away from the highway. This is it, I said. Maybe, he replied. But remember, this road lies. We approached slowly. As my headlights washed over the sign, the arrow flickered, wavering like a mirage. Then it steadied. I made my choice. I turned. The highway screamed, not with sound, but with resistance. The wheel fought me. The truck strained. The air thickened, pressing in from all sides. Behind me, something surged forward, furious. I didn't look. I held the turn. The moment the truck cleared the exit, everything changed. The fog collapsed. The forest fell away. The pressure vanished like a held breath finally released. I was on a different road, a normal one. Street lights stretched ahead in a gentle curve. The night sky opened above me, wide and calm. My radio crackled back to life, a late-night talk show bleeding through static. I pulled over, hands shaking. I shut off the engine and leaned forward, forehead resting against the wheel. For a long time, I didn't move. When I finally looked up, the other truck was gone. No headlights, no engine noise, no trace, just empty road. I don't know if he made it out. I hope he did, because I know this much now. The highway didn't want both of us, and it never lets everyone leave. People assume survival has a clean edge to it, that once you escape something terrible, it stays behind, contained to the place where it happened, like a scar you can point to and say, there. Over time, the memory dulls, the fear thins, and life stitches itself back together. That's the story we tell ourselves because the alternative is unbearable. The truth is, some places don't end when you leave them. They learn you. I sat on the shoulder of that ordinary road for a long time, engine off, hazard lights blinking steadily in the dark. The radio murmured about weather patterns and late-night callers, normal voices, normal concerns. It all felt staged, like the world had been carefully reassembled just for me. I waited for the pressure to return, for the fog to roll back in, for the road to twist itself into something else again. Nothing happened. Eventually, exhaustion overtook vigilance. I checked my surroundings one last time, merged back onto the road, and drove toward the nearest town. Actual lights this time, spread out and uneven, the way human places always are. The town didn't have a name I recognized. It didn't matter. It had a gas station that smelled like burnt coffee and disinfectant, a diner with cracked vinyl booths, and a motel with a flickering vacancy sign. I parked the truck and went inside the diner. The bell above the door chimed, a sound so painfully normal it almost made my knees buckle. A waitress looked up from the counter, middle-aged, tired, real. "Long night?" she asked. I nodded. "You have no idea," I said. She poured coffee without asking. The cup was warm in my hands. Solid. Real. I took a sip and nearly cried. I didn't tell anyone what had happened. I didn't ask questions about local roads or disappearances. I paid my bill, left a tip that felt inadequate, and walked back out into the night. The motel room was small and forgettable. That was a blessing. I lay on the bed, staring at the ceiling, listening to the low hum of traffic from the highway nearby. Sleep didn't come easily. Every time I closed my eyes, I felt the phantom resistance of the wheel fighting my hands. Saw fog pressing against glass. Heard my name spoken with terrible familiarity. But eventually, exhaustion won. When I woke, sunlight filtered through thin curtains. Morning traffic moved outside. The world looked ordinary again. Too ordinary. I checked out, climbed back into the truck, and finished the delivery. Dispatch asked why I was late. I told them weather and road work. They accepted it without question. They always do. For a while, life returned to routine. Miles blurred together. Deliveries completed. Conversations stayed shallow and safe. I avoided that region without consciously deciding to. My routes adjusted themselves naturally, like a body learning to avoid pain. I thought I'd gotten away clean. That illusion lasted until the first sign. It happened weeks later, in a completely different state, on a highway I'd driven countless times. The weather was clear, traffic light, the road familiar, and yet, for just a second, the scenery repeated. Same overpass, same billboard, same cluster of trees. Twice, my stomach dropped. I slowed, heart hammering, scanning mirrors and gauges. Everything looked normal. The road moved on, changing as it should. I told myself it was fatigue. The second sign came later. At a truck stop, I caught my reflection in the glass door and didn't recognize the man staring back. Not because he looked different, but because his eyes held something old. Something that had learned to watch the road too carefully. I stopped sleeping well after that. Dreams bled into waking moments. Sometimes, when I drove through heavy mist or rain, I felt that familiar pressure building behind my eyes, as if the world were testing whether I remembered the rules. Don't stop where it wants you to. Don't trust what feels safe too quickly. Never assume a road is just a road. I considered quitting, selling the truck, taking a job that kept me off the highways. But there's a cruelty to how this thing works. It doesn't just trap drivers, it binds them. The road had rewired me. Motion felt necessary now. Stillness felt dangerous. The idea of settling down, of staying in one place too long, made my skin itch. I kept driving. Years passed. I learned the warning signs, the subtle ones no one talks about. A rest area that feels too quiet. A stretch of highway where sound seems swallowed. A curve that leads back to something you swear you've already passed. When I sense them, I slow down. I stay alert. Sometimes I turn around before I understand why. That habit saved me more than once. I never saw the other driver again. But sometimes, late at night, when the radio slips into static for no reason at all, I hear a voice that isn't meant for me. It sounds relieved, like someone who made it out just a moment later. I I try not to listen. Then came the letter. No return address, no postmark I recognized. It arrived folded neatly, tucked between utility bills and junk mail like it belonged there. Inside was a single sheet of paper, 3 sentences. Some roads don't close, they relocate. Thank you for showing us how to leave. My hands shook as I read it. Us. I burned the letter in my sink, watching the words curl and blacken, ash spiraling into the air. The smell lingered long after the flames died. I told myself it meant nothing. I was wrong. The last encounter happened not on a highway, but in my driveway. I just returned from a long run, truck parked, engine ticking as it cooled. The neighborhood was quiet, washed in evening light. Kids played down the street. A dog barked somewhere. Normal. I shut the door and froze. Across the street at the edge of the pavement stood a woman. Not her. This one looked alive, whole, dressed plainly. She stood still, watching my house. For a heartbeat, I felt the old terror surge back. Then she spoke. "Is this the place?" she asked. Her voice was human, nervous, uncertain. "What place?" I replied carefully. "The road," she said. "The one that doesn't let go." My blood ran cold. "I think I made a wrong turn," she continued. "My map stopped working. Everything feels off." I stared at her, seeing the signs written all over her posture, the way her eyes darted, the way she stood like someone waiting for instructions. She hadn't been trapped yet. Not fully. "You need to keep moving," I said. "Don't stop. Don't trust shortcuts." She frowned. "Do you know how to get out?" I hesitated. Telling her too much could pull me back in, but saying nothing felt like a death sentence for her. "You turn around when it tells you not to," I said, "and you don't accept help that arrives too easily." She nodded slowly, absorbing it. "Thank you," she said. She turned and walked back to her car. I watched her drive away, headlights disappearing around the corner. The air felt lighter afterward, like something had been satisfied. That's when I understood the final truth. The road doesn't just trap people, it recruits them. Survivors become signposts, warnings, sometimes guides, sometimes bait. I don't know why I was spared. I don't know why the road let me keep my life. Maybe it needed someone on the outside, someone who remembers. So if you're listening to this story while driving, especially on a road you don't recognize, pay attention. If the scenery starts repeating, if your map goes blank, if stopping feels like relief instead of risk, keep moving. And if you ever see someone standing where they shouldn't be, waiting like they've been there forever, don't assume it's the first meeting, because some highways don't end. They just learn new ways to find you.